Okay guys, so for today's video we are going to be discussing how Russian figure skaters are actually paid, because there are a number of ways that Russian skaters are paid compared to Western skaters. So many people think that they're usually paid through sponsorship because Western skaters usually are paid like that, or Western athletes, but it's very actually different. There are a number of different sources of income, and mainly it's very supported by the state. So the first one is salary state-supported sport. So in Russian elite athletes, they're not treated like independent contractors the way the US or Western countries are. A lot of top athletes get money through state sport structures. And there are a number of different state sport structures that we're going to have a look at, but mainly that, yes, it's a very popular sport, figure skating in Russia, and particular that the state don't mind funding those skaters to develop talent. So the first step is the monthly scholarship. So Russia introduced an updated presidential scholarship for certain categories of athletes and coaches with a maximum reported level of 60,000 rubles per month. So that means that a Russian skater slash coach, because they probably split the salary, gets a monthly salary based off if they're on the national team. So if you're top 10, even if you don't do really well in competitions, you're still able to get those salary. And it's kind of more stabilizing in that way. 60,000 rubles per month is quite a lot in Russia because the cost of living is much lower than Western countries, partly because there's much of a varied income. So depending on that, it can be really high prices or can be quite low. And this isn't prize money, it's like a monthly supported payment tied to status and achievement. The second one is National Team Training Center Pay Funding. A Russian Forbes report described how pay can be linked to results and gave examples of top-level athletes' monthly salary around 150,000 rubles, which equals to $200 monthly, plus a lifetime of presidential stipend for Olympic medals. So basically, this is another form of pay, which is training center funding. So a lot of the camps are state funded, and because of that, they also pay athletes and coaches. Now, it has been reported that the skater would be getting, if they have really good results, $200 per month plus a lifetime. So a lifetime salary is for those given if they achieve Olympics, gold, silver, or bronze at the Olympics. They are funded lifetime. So obviously it's not the best money to support you throughout the life. That means you can't stop working, that's it. No, you probably will have to work on the side, but it's still cool that you still have a lifetime supply of some money coming in through your achievements. And this is only really done in Russia. I haven't seen any other country really do that, but Russia really funds their skaters because athletes are treated as a national symbol and are supported. It's like more than just a private thing, it's for the whole nation. So it's been reported 52,000 rubles per month Olympic gold, 39,000 rubles for silver, and 30,000 for bronze. So that means if they achieve gold in the Olympics, they'll be getting $690 per month. Silver would be $520 per month, and bronze would be $400 per month. Now, this is the lifetime salary that we're on about if you achieve to the Olympics. That's partly why some Olympians or some athletes, they want to achieve that Olympic gold because of the lifetime salary, which adds a bonus and motivation for them, because that means they don't really have to worry about a job in that sense, because they will be getting some sort of money for it. But also, obviously, other factors implement because they want more of a record holding, they want status, they want their achievements to be known. So think of it like this. In your system, you're the top level, you may have a predictable monthly income, and Olympic medals can be ongoing monthly payments, which is just cool to think about. Imagine if you're an athlete. That's why Russian athletes, I think being an athlete actually in Russia is more bonuses, more positives than negatives. Right, moving on to the next one is competition prize money, domestic and international. So domestic prize money got a lot bigger during the ban. So when Russian athletes were restricted from international competitions to keep the players more motivated, to keep athletes from working, from training, they increased the domestic prize money. So after Russian skaters largely blocked from the IOC events, domestic competitions became more important financially. Some examples widely reported for the Russian Grand Prix series: 500,000 rubles for winning a stage, 300,000 rubles for second, and third you get 200,000 rubles. So let's convert that into dollars. The first place you got $6,700, for second place $4,000, and for third place $2,650. And that's only for Grand Prix stages. For the Russian nationals, it's probably into millions. And that is quite good prize money and will keep players more motivated to really up their game domestically, rather than just sitting back down on their laurels because they know that they're not going to international competitions. No, it keeps producing more stars, more training to when they are, going back to international competitions, that they're not as weak. If you win multiple stages, the national type events prize money starts adding up, but it still doesn't automatically beat show business money. Now that is where skaters can earn a lot. So for comparison, in international competitions, the IOC Grand Prix events listed their prize money. For first place, they'll be getting $18,000. For second place, they'll be getting $13,000. And for third, $9,000. And that's only for a single placement at the Grand Prix. So before the bans and restrictions, international prize money, sponsors, and global visibility were a major part of a Russian skater's income. But now, because they are stripped of international, the domestic prize money has been valued even more to kind of compensate for what's happening. Plus, the Olympic or major events like World Championships, European Championships add their own bonuses. So Russia has a long tradition of one-time medal bonuses. For example, a 2024 report about government payments for Paris medalists stated 4 million rubles for gold, 2.5 million for silver, and 1.7 for bronze. So that means that the Olympic cycle in 2024, that's how much an athlete was paid for their one time of medals. Different countries pay out for their different Olympic medals or world medals, major events. Russia does prioritize their athletes a lot and will pay good money for the athlete to be able to really win that medal. So just to break it down into dollars, that's for first place $53,000 for gold. Second for silver is $33,000, and for third, $22,500. That is a lot of money for, this is like a one-off time. So you win that medal, you get that money, and the salary will still come monthly. So those are really incredible prize money, but it's not what all skaters live off of, because think about this, only a certain number of skaters are selected for the Olympics, for the World Championships, European Championships, and you need to win a medal to be able to get access to that money. So that's why it isn't really a realistic income stream. Now, the show business money is where the realism really comes into, and this is where even those that do not compete or are not even well known can still earn money through their passion of skating. So this is all for ice shows and commercial entertainment industry. Top skaters can earn far more than those from just sport stipends. So just to explain it a little bit clearer, the competitive skating, this is where you get the prestige, you get selection, and you get funding and shows. Ice shows usually are ticket sale businesses, fees, and steady touring money for stars. So that's how the ice show business kind of runs. I do a deep down video of how ice shows are run, a little breakdown, so make sure you check that video out. But ice shows primarily are not for competition. They don't offer prestigious, selections and funding and shows. It's usually for ticket sales. They provide fees and touring for mainly stars, but others can also do it. So if you do become a name, you can earn by touring, TV projects, gala shows, brand deals, and appearances. So usually it really is dependent on your status. Now, the competitions are really created for you to be able to earn your status, to earn your medals, and then when you become well known, you can get leading star roles. That's how ice shows are designed. But of course, you can also be backup dancers, you can be skating in the background, but all of them level up differently. So if you have a star skater, definitely going to be paying a lot more than just a regular skater. So that's why precise per show fees are rarely transparent. Stars will earn more than usual skaters, but it very much depends, which is interesting because each star, depending on their fame and how much they are willing, like people have a really high fan base, will earn. So for example, Alexandra Trusova, she's like the quad queen, everybody loves her and goes to her. She'll be earning significantly more than, for example, Alina Zagitova, even though she is like an Olympic champion, but she doesn't have quads. She has a less fan base compared to Alexandra Trusova. So they're going to be earning completely different. But there are also federational covered costs, money you don't see, but it does matter. So a lot of income versus expenses get misunderstood. Even when skaters get paid, training is very expensive. A reported example from comments attributed for choreographer/producer Ilya Verbuch quoted into the skating media that he described choreography costs roughly 120 to 280,000 rubles depending on short/free, etc. So even if you win your 500,000, you can burn chunks on choreography, costumes, competition, travel, medical, and blades. Now, if you are part of the national team, that is quite different because the national team are usually top skaters and they're quite consistent if they are scoring very high in competitions. All of those costs are covered for them, and like the fees, the choreography, the costumes, the travel, all of that is covered, but those skaters that are not part of the national team have to pay all of this, which is very expensive. Figure skating is one of those expensive sports. So let's compare the Russian skaters a bit to the West skaters. I'm going to break down the Western skaters' income a little bit so you understand how much their money comes from what, because it's a little bit different. A lot of Russian skaters are state funded. This one is not. This is very individual. Again, skating is looked at your personal brand and not as a collection or part of a nation, if you get what I mean. So most Western skaters do not make money from skating. They fund skating. Now that is really important to know and keep in mind. In the West, skating is treated as a private sport, an individual business, and a family-funded pursuit, which is completely different to Russian figure skating. Primarily that it's not private, it's not an individual business, it's a country's business, and family funded might be at the start, or if you're not part of the national team. The rest, if you are part of the national team, funded everything for you. But in the West, even if you are part of the national team, you might get a bit of discounts stuff, but it's not fully funded because it is a private business. There are no guaranteed salary for any elite skater. For prize money, the typical IOC Grand Prix prize money is, like I mentioned, $80,000, $13,000, and $9,000 for first, second, and third. So that means even if you get lower placements, you do get a couple thousands, but it's nowhere near to be able to fund you fully. And prize money, again, is not a stable income because you might do really well in one competition, but you might not do well in the second. And the prize money usually for Western skaters pay for flights, coaching fees, and next competitions. It rarely becomes a personal income. There are so many expenses that skaters have to do that honestly it's not efficient, nor does the prize money really outweigh the extreme costs. Now for the federational funding and grants, they're very limited and selective. The US offer high performance team funding, project-based grants, and travel support. But none of that is actually fully free. As I said, it might be discounted, there might be a few grants offered for projects, and support for travel, they might offer a short discount, but you still have to pay, which doesn't actually guarantee you anything. You still need to pay quite a bit. And again, it's very selective. Only a few people get that, and you have to be on an elite level. So for those that aren't quite reaching the very high, it's very hard. For the United Kingdom, British ice skating funding is tied to medal potential, Olympic pathways, but many elite skaters still self-funded and rely on family money. So that means that, again, it's very selective, and only if you are producing medals and going to the Olympic pathway that there might be a few grants given to you. But again, it doesn't cover the full cost, which is definitely harder, and that's why a lot of the skaters are self-funded and have to always rely on some sort of other income stream. In Canada, Skate Canada, one of the better funded Western systems, but still funding is tied and not everyone gets it. There's not a lot of support. So federations in the West usually do help out the skaters, but it's not a salary and shouldn't be compared to. Mainly what they want the athletes to do is seek sponsorship. The common sponsors, skating for boots, apparel brands, or some sort of nutrition brand or local business that can help and try and fund for the skater to be able to compete, cover costs, etc. But the thing is, most sponsors don't offer fully covered. They are just discounted as always. They don't offer cash, they just offer to pay for things. But again, it's very much tied down to not everybody can get sponsored, and it's actually very hard to get sponsored. You have to have a really strong personal brand. You have to be some sort of Olympic medalists, viral stars, or just generally doing really well on social media that they can bounce off to convert their customers to generate more sales. So very much social media is much more valued than the actual quality of skating. Another realistic pathway that Western skaters usually get funded is through crowdfunding and family money. Those are the two realistic kind of possible options, and it's often unspoken about, but it's very true. Western skaters often rely on parent funding, and that's a very big thing. $30,000 to $80,000 per year is needed to be funded in order to pay for a figure skating career. There are other crowdfunding websites like GoFundMe, which is a sponsorship appeal, community fundraising events like bake sales, or other events that people can raise money for you to help cover your costs. For commercial work ice shows, they're not very popular in the West compared to Russia, and they're not very funded. It's really rare, very inconsistent, usually around the holiday time, Christmas, but again, you get very small crowds because it's not as popular as in Russia. There's so many other sports that get so much more attention. Figure skating is classified as a niche sport and gets very little media attention. So that's why you can't really build a stable income. Many Western skaters coach part-time, choreograph programs, teach, learn to skate, create content, work in normal jobs on the side. So really they're side hustling on the side and are to really part-time for their figure skating career, that is very hard, because we see that in Russia, all of them are training 8 hours a day, like a full athlete's life, just training and then resting. But for Western countries, a lot of them have to self-fund themselves, have to seek part-time jobs in order to make their opportunities, and even that really excludes from the training. You get very tired, you get very burnt out, and that's why you lose a lot of talent. I'm just going to break down the yearly expenses for figure skating. Coaching is usually £15,000 a year. Ice time is 10,000 to 20,000. Choreography 2K to 5K. Travel and hotel 10K plus. Very depends. Boots, blades, medicals are even thousands more. And earnings are very inconsistent, as I mentioned. So it's very hard to be able to be a figure skater and to build this dream. So the Western model really creates financial anxiety, burnout, talent loss, and early retirement. And that's why we see a lot of skaters really struggling, and even just artistic, or give it any sport that doesn't have as much media attention as, for example, football. But it's very hard in general. That's why countries like Russia, they're very much state-funded and really heavily depend on sport. It's not a private sphere, it's a public sphere. And that's the main differences between how the Russian skaters earn a lot compared to Western skaters, that maybe certain skaters can earn thousands and maybe even millions and can make this their full-time job, and some simply cannot. And in that case, a lot cannot, and just have to quit because they cannot afford it anymore. And that's how talent is very much lost. Whereas in Russia, it's really building up the talent pool. It's extremely large, and only certain skaters are really selected to be top. That's why the competition is very intense, and people are progressing and building. Whereas in the West, it's very much more relaxed, very sports individuality, whether they want to do it or not, because it is the private sector. And those are the two main differences. What do you guys think about this? Let me know your thoughts down below about whether you think which system you prefer, the Russian system of ways of earning income. Do you think that the West needs to implement some here, or do you think that Russia needs to implement more of the private sector? What do you guys think about this? Let me know your thoughts down below.